What is up, guys? TEJ here. We are live with equipment vlog number 5. We got two things on the agenda today to test. First and foremost, PXG's brand new 0317T irons just dropped. This is going to be the newest release in the player's distance category from PXG. Very comparable to your P770, I230, etc., etc. Additionally, we are going to be putting the Titleist TSR2 Plus fairway wood, the bigger headed fairway wood, up against my $65 Aero Burner mini driver from a couple videos ago. Should be a fun test. I'm excited. Headed out to the golf course. Let's get it. All right, guys, so PXG's brand new 0317T irons, going to be the latest player's distance release from PXG. Really, the goal this year with the 0317Ts was to make them more consistent. You know, one of the biggest complaints about player's distance irons in general is the fact that they have quote-unquote hot spots. Because the center of gravities are very low, the faces are very thin, there are spots on the face, especially above the center of gravity, where you can catch them. They come out hot, high, with no spin, also known as a jumper. And as I just mentioned, the goal of the new ones is to really make them a bit more consistent. And PXG's claim to fame in this year's model is they have a new goo behind the face that is going to stabilize the face and also help the golf ball come out with a lower initial launch angle and higher spin rates. Now, me personally, I have no idea how the hell goo can make the golf ball come out lower with more spin. My guess is it's pulling the center of gravity up, or they move the center of gravity up in these irons, and so they launch a little bit lower with more spin. Additionally, from my understanding, the goo does actually stabilize the face in a way where it slows the amount of face flex down that these irons have. So, you know, think about it like the TaylorMade drivers from a few years ago. They had those speed injection ports. The faces were actually hotter than the USGA legal limit, and then TaylorMade would use those ports to inject goo behind the face that slowed them down to the legal limit. So from my understanding, these new PXG irons are pretty much built the same way. The goo is actually being used to stabilize the face, slow it down a little bit, so there isn't as much face flex, and in turn you're getting a little bit more consistency in terms of ball speed and distance. Next thing, we are going to be testing my Aero Burner mini driver up against the Titleist TSR2 Plus. So on the Aero Burner mini driver video, somebody commented they wanted to see me test these head to head. And you know what I always say, guys, if you ever want to see something, if you're ever curious about something, drop a comment, shoot me a DM, and I will do my absolute best to make it happen. So we will be putting those head to head, kind of give you guys my thoughts on, you know, how they look, how they perform, feel, sound, launch, spin, ball speed, carry, etc., etc. As far as shafts in those two mini driver sort of clubs, Tour AD UB7Xs, both tipped 1 inch. So should be a very comparable test. I feel like I should be able to give you guys some pretty solid insights. But yeah, that's what we got on the agenda today. We'll be at the golf course soon. Let's get it. Alrighty, guys, so I think the way that we are going to conduct this testing is we're going to go through the PXG's wedge 7/4 iron, and then we'll go into the I230s, kind of compare them, see how they kind of feel in comparison to one another, and then we'll move into the woods. So got GC quad here. The numbers aren't going to be perfect, but you know, what are you going to do? But in terms of looks, this is the pitching wedge, very minimal offset. Obviously a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker than maybe the CBs and the STs, but they look very good. They don't give me hollow body design vibes, if that makes sense. Like when you look down at like an I230, it's a little bit thicker looking. This is still relatively thin looking, almost just feels like a CB, which I really do appreciate. And that is a very good start. Turf interaction, so good on that shot. Very, very good. Spin was pretty wonky on that one, but fortunately that's really just due to the range balls, I think, more than anything. But 136 carry. Oh, the turf interaction is incredible. What's really interesting about these is that the soles are relatively thin. Like when you compare them to the 230s, much thinner soles, and that's another reason that I think I've gone back to blades, is because I just prefer that feel through the turf. I mean, the feel is phenomenal. Great height. Turf interaction is incredible. I don't know what is going on with the spin, because there's no way that these are only spinning 5,800. That's just an abomination. There's no way. but I am shocked at how good these feel and how good the turf interaction is. I really like the narrower soles. There's a touch of trail edge relief, but honestly, for as much bounce as these have, you would expect the sole to be a lot wider, and they're just not very wide. In terms of carry numbers, I mean, the spin's been low, but ball speed-wise, all within about 2 miles an hour. Carry, all within 4 yards, 136 on the low end, 140 on the high end. Hit one more here, and then we'll move up into the 7-iron. 141 carry, 104 ball. Very consistent. Feel is just superb. Really, really solid start. Move up into the 7-iron. Now, the thing I love about PXG is we always see 2 different finishes. So we're gonna have chrome. We're also gonna have that extreme dark finish, the black finish, which is just absolutely stunning as well. I mean, a lot of people sleep on PXG, but I don't see why. Once again, turf interaction. So good. You know, I don't play players' distance irons for a lot of different reasons. You know, the biggest reason for me is I don't want any inconsistencies in spin. I don't want to see jumpers. But another big thing is as you move into that more game improvement style golf club, you tend to get that thicker sole, thicker head. These are very well proportioned. They do not feel like players' distance irons. I wouldn't say they're the thinnest irons I've ever seen, but the blade length to me is perfect. Little touch of offset as you move down into the 7-iron. In terms of numbers there, 6,300 spin, 181 carry, 127 ball. Very solid numbers. What I like is they feel soft. In terms of consistency, that was within 50 RPMs of the last one, 1 mile an hour more ball speed, 1 more yard more carry. So the big thing with these was to make them more consistent. And based on the numbers I've seen, I've only hit a handful of shots, but they do seem very consistent. What I like is, although they're hollow bodied, they don't feel crazy hot. That's another thing that I don't tend to love about players' distance irons is they feel very hot. And when you tend to feel that hotness as the player, you tend to want to slow down a little bit. You don't want to give it everything because you do not want the golf ball to go absolutely sailing. These feel soft, very nice and soft, but they don't feel hot. I feel like I can be aggressive through the impact zone and I'm not really worrying about them going way too far, which is a good thing. And 6,300 spin, all things considered, is very solid. These are 2 degrees stronger than irons I would normally play. So this is 32 in the 7-iron. I would normally play 34. So that makes sense to see that slight drop in spin. Spin honestly jumped up on that one. I hit it slightly lower on the face, 7,200 spin, 179 carry, 128 ball. Very consistent and nice to see that when I catch one a little low on the face, the spin does go up. It doesn't stay way down. Because I think what that goes to show is if you do catch one high on the face, it's not going to come out super, super knuckly. It's going to come out still with a decent amount of spin. In terms of launch, land angle looks very good. We'll try to cut one here. That was just a bad strike. 169 carry, 7,400 spin. We'll go for a little bit of a higher cut here. There it is, a little higher cut. 176 carry, 7,500 spin. I mean, dude, super good numbers. Super good. These might be one of the best players' distance irons I've tested this year. I'm gonna be honest. I'm kind of shocked at how much I like these. I still don't think I'd play them, you know, like 7 through pitching wedge. I still think I would want a 1-piece golf club just so I am 100% knowing that I'm getting the utmost consistency that I can get out of the middle of the face. But like, I could see these being phenomenal for a higher speed player, like 4, 5, 6 iron, maybe even like 4, 5, 6, 7 iron, because they are pretty consistent in terms of launch and spin numbers. Moving to the 4 iron here in a second. I mean, dude, like that was a bigger draw and the spin just like didn't drop on me. Still 7,200, 129 ball, 179 carry. Very consistent, very solid. Let's go ahead and move into the 4 iron. Again, looking down at this, what I love is like this just does not look player's distance. It looks very, very thin. This just gives me CB vibes. Very simple. I mean, that is ridiculously high for a 4 iron. Little toey, 207 carry, 5,000 spin, 139 ball. Again, a little toey, 212, 4,400, 140 ball. I think that's the beauty of an iron like this. Like these are a couple toey shots and you're still getting very solid numbers, really good carry. 212 for me out of a 4 iron that's 22.5 degrees is pretty much exactly what I like to see on a miss. Ideally, I'd love to see it around 220 at a good strike. So, you know, maybe we can see if I could actually hit one out of the frickin' center of the face. That was more centered. I didn't really release it hard enough, didn't get up super high. I don't think it got it. I might have been out of the zone there. 216, 4,700, 144 ball. Really, really good numbers. Let's move into the I-230s. We've got them in a 7-iron and 4-iron now. Not the same shafts, not gonna be a perfect, ideal test. And we'll put some video up, kind of show you guys how they compare. In terms of looks, already just looking down at these, a little bit thicker top line. Offset specs actually do seem probably pretty similar. Blade length to me might be a little bit longer on the PXGs. It's pretty close. It might just be the proportions. Actually very similar looking heads. To me, the 230 just looks a hair thicker. And if you look at the soles and stuff, once again, 230 is just a little bit thicker soled. So, you know, those preferences are really going to come down to the type of player you are. If you're somebody who's a little bit steeper, maybe you play in more wet conditions, you might prefer something like a 230, a little bit thicker, a little bit harder to chunk per se. Those PXGs are, to me, going to be a little bit more cavity back-like. Maybe if you're somebody who plays in firmer conditions, but you want a little bit better sole, but still in that player's distance category, those might be a hair better. We'll hit these, kind of see how they feel, see how they perform. Yeah, dude, I mean, these... You know, if you saw my review of these, I mean, I gave these a very high rating. I really, really liked them. 142 ball, 217 carry, 4,300 spin. That was just a complete mishit. A little bit of a slippage in terms of my feet. Yeah, dude, I mean, 142 ball, 218 carry, 4,400 spin. I don't know, guys. I really, really like these 230s. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I rated them a 9.7. Like, looks-wise, I think I'd go with the PXGs. Performance-wise, I'm not sure. Because, like, that is just stupid good. 213 carry, 4,700 spin, 142 ball. Go back to the PXGs. 4,700, 212, 141. A little bit low on the face. Oh, man. This is a little bit hard to decipher. I do think I like the soles of the PXGs just a little bit better for my game. I tend to like thinner soles, but to me, the pings, there's just something about those pings, man. Something about those pings. Because like that was like a low kind of pull shot, and for me, on that strike, the pings would get up just a hair more, I think. Numbers-wise, I don't think it would be way better, but I think it would get up just a hair more, stay a hair more right. But yeah, guys, I mean, I think if you're in between both of them, you really need to hit them side by side to be able to make that comparison, because they are awfully freaking close. They really are. It's tough for me to sit here and say one's better than the other. They're just a little bit different. To me, personally, if I had to choose one to play, I do think I would give the slightest edge to the pings just because of the fact they're not hollow-bodied. But aside from that, I mean, these are very consistent for a hollow-body design, which was PXG's goal. Very good. Very good. Very big fan of the 0317Ts. All right, guys, so now we're going to move up into our mini drivers. We have the Aero Burner Mini $65 Aero Burner Mini up against the Titleist TSR2 Plus. So first and foremost, this is 12 degrees. This is 13 degrees, but we have it down to 12 1/4. That way our numbers are going to be relatively close in terms of ball speed, launch, spin, etc. As we take a look at these heads, I would say the Aero Burner is maybe a touch more rounded. The TSR is maybe a touch more triangular looking. As far as face depth, the Aero Burner Mini is definitely more of a mini driver. It is definitely a little bit deeper. Lengthwise, they're the exact same length. But yeah, let's just go ahead and freaking get into this. Now, the big thing about the TSR2 Plus is that although it is a secondary driving option, it's also good because it allows you to hit it off the ground. As I just mentioned, it's not quite as deep as the as the Aero Burner Mini, and not nearly as deep as, say, like the actual 2023 Burner Mini driver. Those are more driver replacements. That is more of a fairway wood replacement that is also good off the tee, if that makes sense. So we'll get some numbers for you guys, kind of see what's up. That was hit okay. 161 ball, 271 carry, 2,800 spin. A little bit low spin, caught it a skosh high on the face. But as you guys know, I really love this burner mini personally. It's been really solid for me. That was better. 163 ball, 267 carry, 3,300 spin. Those are the numbers I like to live at with this driver. And I've hit this off the deck. I think I just mentioned, you know, the TSR2 Plus is a little bit better off the deck. Because it is shallower, yes, it is going to be a little bit better off the deck. But with that being said, I just played yesterday. I had like 285 into a par 5. I hit this thing off the deck, tight draw, no real issues. So what I do like about this in comparison to, say, the burner mini is it's still deep enough to hit off the tee, but because it's shallower, you can really pretty simply hit it off the ground. It's not so hard to hit off the ground. And that's what I do really like about it. But in terms of numbers, you know, I live right around 160 to 165 ball, 270 carry. That was a sort of low pull. 62 ball, 270 carry, 2,500 spin. But that was just kind of a high on the face. Low pull. Let me see if I can find a tee somewhere. That was just a chunky, nasty 159 carry. I hit about a frickin' foot behind that. But still 263 carry, 2,400 spin. There it is. 62 carry, 274 spin, 2,800. Excuse me, 274 carry, 2,800 spin. So like I said to you guys, that's kind of where I like to live at with that mini driver. All right, TSR2 Plus. Again, looking down at it, definitely shallower. In terms of off the tee, I don't love how shallow it is personally, but that's just me. Just because of off the tee, I like to have a little bit more face depth. That was high in the face, not gonna have much spin. 161 ball, 2,500 spin, 276 carry. So I believe that's our longest carry of the day so far. 61 ball, 276 carry, 2,500 spin. Yeah, I mean, this thing is, it goes, man. But that is what I don't love. Because it's so shallow, if you catch one a little too high, it just knuckles. 1,900 spin, 160 ball. It says 274 carry, there's no shot that carried 274. I think probably carried like 240. I'd really like to hit one out of the center. I kind of keep hitting it high in like a hair heel. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this TSR2 Plus to me. Like, it just feels a little bit harder to hit. Like, I feel like I really have to center it. With that one, I feel like I can miss it a hair toe, a hair heel, and I still get, you know, some decent ball speed numbers out of it and some decent other numbers out of it as well. You know, I think the big thing it's going to come down to between like this, you know, and that, but like more so if you're considering this or a mini driver, you're probably considering like the 300 mini or the actual burner mini. I think it's really just going to come down to, do you like the shallower face depth? Is this going to be your 3-wood replacement? That is not my 3-wood replacement. That goes in the bag instead of a driver. So I always play a 3-wood and I will swap the drivers based on golf course. So that's why I like to have a little bit more face depth, because I'm not using that off the ground. If you're using this off the ground, it's going to be, you know, more useful than say an actual mini driver. But again, to me, it's just a little bit harder to hit, if you will. Like the forgiveness isn't quite as there. That was sort of centered, a little toe, but like 163 ball, 277 carry, 2,100 spin. Just a little bit low spin for me. I don't really like to see it that low in terms of spin. Now again, I mean, they're range balls. Is the spin exactly what it actually is? Probably not. But like with that one, I live right around 3,000. With this one, I seem to live a lot closer to like 2,500. So yeah, I'd really like to actually center one. Yeah, I mean, you guys can just see, like, it's simply harder to hit. I mean, there's no way around it. And that's the thing, is it's just not a mini driver. Like, this thing is probably way sicker off the ground. Probably chunk this now that I said that. I mean, it's much sicker off the ground. 3,200, 163, 266 carry, because I'm catching it at the center of gravity. I'm not catching it above the center of gravity, if that makes sense. So, like, those are sick numbers. 63, 266, 3,100, or 3,200. And then if I hit this, much lower launch, 2,900, 163, 260 carry. So it's harder to get up in the air because we're catching it a little bit below the center of gravity. But like I said to you guys, I wouldn't use this off the ground. I can hit it off the ground, but like I'm only using it if I'm trying to chase it into a par 5. I'm really strictly using it off the tee. So hopefully that kind of explains everything. I think the TSR2 Plus is a fantastic golf club. If you want a 3-wood, that can also be a little bit of a driver replacement, because in terms of numbers, these stack up very, very closely. Now that I look down at these again though, the TSR2 Plus is very clearly smaller. It's much smaller than the Aero Burner Mini. But in terms of numbers, very similar, just depends what you want in terms of what you're going to be using it out on the golf course for. So hopefully that helps answer your question. That's all we got for today. We'll kind of give you a summary in the car. Good to go. All right, guys, so let's just kind of go ahead and summarize our testing. We'll start with the PXG 0317Ts. As far as looks go, really good looking set of golf clubs. To me, very, very CB-esque. A little bit thinner top line, thinner soles. I think they've done a very nice job with the looks. If you're somebody who's looking for a player's distance iron, but you really genuinely want them to look like a player's iron, you want them to look like a CB, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better looking iron than the 0317Ts. Moving into feel, really good feeling set of golf clubs, which was something that kind of surprised me a little bit. With player's distance irons, like I mentioned earlier, I tend to struggle with feel. Usually they feel pretty hot, and because of that, I kind of slow down through the impact zone because I don't want them to go too far. With these, they feel soft, but you do not feel a super high amount of face flex. You don't feel that hotness, if that makes sense, which I think is fantastic. They really just feel like a nice solid set of CBs. As far as turf interaction goes, quite frankly, I would argue these have some of the best turf interaction I've ever tested in a player's distance iron 6 through pitching wedge. They move through the ground extremely well. Now, the bounce angles are higher, but because the soles are thin, they still get through the ground really well. Where I would argue that these aren't amazing turf interaction wise is in the 4 and 5 iron. You could maybe even argue the 6 iron as well. Because they are thin, it's something I like, but I could see it being an issue for this sort of category of golf club. Usually somebody who's going to play this is going to want a little bit more help. They're going to want a little bit wider sole, a little bit lower center of gravity in those clubs. And so from that perspective, I would maybe have liked to have seen a little bit wider soles in the long clubs. But you could easily fix this problem by maybe comboing them with like the P's in the 4, 5, and 6 or something like that. I think that could be a really good option. But yeah, as far as turf interaction goes, in the short club specifically, really, really good. Now moving on to forgiveness, very solidly forgiving set of golf clubs. I think it's a tough category because at the end of the day, they're supposed to be player's irons, but they're also supposed to be helpful. And you know, when you look at these in the 4, 5, and 6 iron, there were a lot of shots I missed all over the face, more specifically toe, that I felt did quite well. Now, are they going to be as good as, say, your P irons? Probably not. Are they going to be as good as, you know, something that's a little more game improvement-y? Probably not. But are they an improvement over like a CB? Yes, I do believe that. So in terms of forgiveness, it really depends what you currently play and what you're looking for in the future. I think they've done a good job from the forgiveness perspective. Again, it's good in the long clubs, I really do believe that, but it might be a little lacking in comparison to something a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, just in the long clubs. Because, you know, if you heel one, at least for me, what I saw is a little bit lower launch, a little bit more leftward shot than, say, something like a Ping I-230, for example. In terms of consistency, again, I think they've done a very solid job here, specifically 4 through 7 iron. Probably the most consistent T irons I've ever tested from PXG in that 4 through 7 iron slot. That said, as I got these out on the golf course, tested them more in that 8 through pitching wedge slot, that's where it got a little bit wonky. One specific instance, it was a par 3, 162 yards, which for me is pretty much a perfect 8 iron. I flushed the 0317T, and right at impact, I just knew it was coming out hot. I knew it was going to go too far. Looked up, waited for it to land, landed in the back bunker about 12, 13 yards too far, and just kind of jumped out of nowhere. So, you know, in terms of who these are going to work for from a consistency perspective, I think you really need to decide on who you are as a player. If you're a higher speed player, you want to play these irons in the long clubs, I could definitely see that being a possibility. Maybe even through the 7 iron, which I've never really seen in this sort of golf club. I've always felt like once I got past the 5 iron, I really needed to move into a CB. With these, I think you could play them through the 7-iron and then maybe combo them with CB's 8-through pitching wedge if you're a higher speed player, if you have more of a tendency to catch hot jumpers out of nowhere. If you're a slower speed player who just wants a little bit more forgiveness, but you want still that thin look, I think you could easily play these 4-through pitching wedge and you really wouldn't struggle much with jumpers. It just depends on your speed. That's really what it comes down to a lot of times with these irons. Now, in comparison to a Ping I-230, for example, there's a reason those are sort of a unicorn iron. To me, the way I would describe it is the I-230s are a CB in a player's distance package. I would describe the PXGs as a player's distance iron in a CB package, meaning they look like a CB, but you do still get that occasional jumper. While they are more consistent than I've seen in the past, you still do get that occasional jumper. The 230s are such a unicorn because you see them in the bags of PGA Tour players all the way down to 10 to 15 handicaps because they are just very consistent, but they're also extremely forgiving. So in terms of how they compare, I do believe the 230s are a little bit more consistent in terms of overall carry numbers, spin numbers, and whatnot. I find them to be a little bit more forgiving as well when it comes down to how thick they are, how wide they are, specifically in the long clubs. While I do love the turf interaction of the PXGs in the short clubs, I do appreciate the width of the soles of the 230s in like a 4, 5, 6 iron. I just think they're a little bit easier to get up in the air. I think the CG is also a little bit lower on the 230s, so I find them easier to launch. As a whole, I still stand by my I-230 rating of a 9.7 out of 10. They are incredible, incredible irons. I think if you were to put the PXGs in the same category, I'd probably give the PXGs an 8.9 out of 10 in comparison to the I-230s. I think if you put the PXGs in just a player's distance category, which I don't really know if the 230s are in that category, they're more in a CB category, then I would probably give the PXGs like a 9.5, a 9.6 out of 10. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better player's distance iron in terms of the thinness and the overall performance than the PXGs. They look really good. They feel really good. The overall performance is there in the player's distance category, but when we're comparing them directly against the 230s, I still think the 230s do reign supreme. They're just such a freaking good iron. It's hard for me to describe. They're just really, really good. Now, as far as how the mini driver experiment went today, fun experiment. And what I will say is that the TSR2 Plus, from what I believe and what I've seen, is just simply not a mini driver. It is a bigger headed fairway wood. It is meant to be used off the ground and off the tee. It is meant to replace your fairway wood, but also be used as a secondary teeing option. The thing about a mini driver is that's what it is. It's not really meant to be used as a fairway wood replacement, and that's how I use it. So that is why I prefer the Aero Burner Mini a little bit more, because I specifically use it off the tee. Yes, I can chase it into par 5s, but I specifically use it off the tee. So I think it really just depends what you're looking for. Both great clubs. You know, if you're watching this video, you're probably considering the Burner Mini and the TSR2 Plus, not the Aero Burner Mini from like 10 years ago. But I just think you need to know what you're looking for in your game. And that's the thing about golf equipment in general. Like, there is no right and wrong answers. There is no, you know, this sucks, that thing's great, that thing sucks, this thing's great. No, it's just different for different people. You know, anything can be good in the right context, and anything can be bad in the right context. So I just think as a player, you need to decide what you're looking for, what you're going to use something for, who you are as a player, and then make equipment decisions based off of that. So as a whole, fun test today. I really enjoyed it. If you guys liked the video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, go ahead and click that notification bell. Make sure you're following us on our other socials. If you have any questions, drop a comment, shoot me a DM on Instagram. That's what we got for you guys. We'll catch you in the next video. Peace.